Welcome back to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, we have Jesse Stanton from the Growth Company. How are you doing today, Jesse?
Bro, if I was any better, I would be you, Nathaniel. Thank you so much for having me, bro. I appreciate you.
Yeah, the pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm excited to have our audience find out about what you've been doing and just kind of get a little bit more of your story from you. Well, I guess we should just go ahead and get right into it. Why don't you tell us how you started getting into real estate investing and what your journey has led to so far?
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. Great question. I had a friend reach out to me about 4.5 years ago. It was this childhood friend. I grew up in this town in Idaho with a population of like just shy of 500 people. It's called Ryrie, Idaho. Like, I'm surprised the main road was even paved. And I had this childhood friend that I grew up with there. And I went and joined the military when I was 18 years old, did 15 years in the Air Force. And he and I lost contact probably around maybe 8th or 9th grade. So it's been like almost 20 years since he and I had even talked. And we got reconnected about 4.5 years ago and kind of just doing the whole, what are you up to? What are you up to? Where you living? Do you have kids? What do you that whole chestnut. And he said, Jesse, have you ever thought about getting into real estate? And I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I did. I thought about getting my realtor's license a few years ago when I used to live in Phoenix. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not talking about being a realtor. He's like, I'm talking about being an investor. And I just kind of gave this big, sarcastic eye roll. And I was like, dude, you can go Google and see what the military makes. Okay. It's not like I just got 6 figures just burning a hole in my pocket so that I can go buy a freaking fourplex in Anchorage, Alaska. And luckily he was really, really patient with me. And he said, you know what? He said, I've actually got, I've got a meeting with some other investors later in the week. He's like, how about you just come onto the Zoom? Just be a fly on the wall. And I was like, all right, well, twist my arm. So if I'm being honest with you though, bro, I didn't even want to show up. Like, I had no interest in it. I knew that if I didn't, then I'm going to have to come up with some excuse to tell him as to why I didn't show up. And that sounded even worse. So I was like, I'll just show up. I'll turn my camera off. I'll turn my mic off. I'll just play some games on my phone and we'll just try and make it through this meeting. So that's what I did. Or at least that's how I started out. And then I started hearing people talk about the properties that they were purchasing, the properties that they were underwriting, properties they have purchased, and how much money they were making. And here was the real kicker, was they were talking about these properties without even using any of their own money and any of their own credit and leveraging other people's debt and other people's money. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. This borderline sounds like a scam. Let me go down this rabbit hole. So that's where it all started, man. Like, I was just in the military as an instructor in the Air Force, and just had a random friend reach out to me one time, man. And just that's kind of what started that whole rabbit hole. Paid for my first mentorship and then my second mentorship. And I've just been paying for information and coaching and all that kind of stuff since.
It kind of sounds like you're peer pressured into real estate.
I feel like I literally had my arm twisted, man. But my goodness, thank goodness. It's so crazy, man. Especially after being in this industry, seeing and just seeing like the opportunities that come about from just intentional networking and friendships that were created. I mean, look at you and I. We're nowhere even near each other.
Yeah, you're in Alaska with all the moose and the sled dogs. And I'm down here with the seagulls and the crickets.
But somehow we're over here connecting and building friendships and doing all these wonderful and amazing things. It's really neat to see just how God works in mysterious ways, my friend.
Yeah, he sure does. I gone through a lot of things in my life that make you question things sometimes, and it always seems to turn out well in the end. When I was a teenager, I thought about ending things because I was in a bad place. But there was 2 things that stopped me. First was that I couldn't have done that to my mother. And then second was that I wasn't convinced that it would end my problems. And so, I'm really grateful that I made the decision to stay, because my life's in such a better place now. And I have a wife and a little boy, and I love them to pieces. And I wouldn't have had that if I'd made that mistake. So it's definitely interesting how things pan out as we go through our lives.
Well, the world's a better place with you in it. My life is a better place with you in it. And I'm sure your baby boy, your beautiful boy, and your
Yeah.
wife would say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't understand until I was a father that children love their parents just because they're parents. They don't have any other reason. They love you just because you're their dad or you're their mom, and that's enough.
How amazing is that? That just unconditional love.
Yep,
What a beautiful thing.
it really is. So, well, that's really cool. You mentioned you were also in the Air Force as an instructor. Were you teaching people how to fly the military planes, or what was that like?
Kind of. I was in a brand new career field in 2009. I was in a brand new career field, and I worked on stealth aircraft, and I taught people all about the stealth technology. And this is like, it was fairly new technology, but it's the reason why our Air Force is second to none.
Okay.
So it was kind of classified. I can't really get too deep into it, but
stuff, or
beg your pardon.
They have anything to do with Lockheed Martin? I know they've got like those stealth planes that they designed.
Yeah. F-22 from Lockheed, okay. F-35. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I actually worked for Lockheed for a little while.
Oh, did you really?
I did. Yep. I'm a CNC machinist, and I help build the jet engines that go into the Taurus and the Tomahawks.
Interesting.
I'm not with Lockheed anymore, but I am with another company that does military contracting.
Gotcha. Okay.
The building for stuff like that.
So were you ever involved with anything, or did you ever see any of like the F-22s, F-35s, anything like
that?
I did.
I was in the hangars with the F-35s here on Hill Air Force Base for a while.
Is that right?
Yep. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they got 22s and 35s down there at Hill.
Yep. So
yeah, that's what I did. That's what I worked on, and that's
very
what I
cool.
on.
It's actually one of my bucket list items to break the sound barrier at some point. I don't know how I'm going to manage that, but I'd love to be able to jump in one of those planes and just experience that for.
And wouldn't that be awesome?
Time, yeah.
And I remember, dude, when I 18 years old, I got to my very first duty station at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and the F-22s in that area, they were doing sonic booms. I'd never heard of a sonic boom before. I was 18 years old, you know? And we're in an aircraft hangar working, and then I hear this big boom. And dude, like the whole thing just rattled.
Yep.
Car alarms were going off. Windows, there were windows that broke. Like, I don't know why he did it. He shouldn't have done it. But there's quite a few things that happened as that. But the first time you hear that is 18 years old, you know? And the only war that you had experienced, or I had experienced up to that point, was what I seen in like Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that thing happens, bro. And I'm like, holy crap, are we getting bombed? For real. It's like, everyone's like, no, it's just a sonic boom. I was like, what is a sonic boom? That was insane. But I can imagine being the pilot. So I think that is a great bucket list to have, my friend.
Well, I've already done the skydiving thing, so that was pretty wild too. But we'll see where life takes us. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I'm going to shoot for it. So
I dig it, bro.
So, all right. Well, cool. That's very neat that you got into that. What did that lead to?
Oh my gosh, a lot of failure. I ended up starting out wholesaling, because I think that's where most people end up starting out, just wholesaling. And when you start out wholesaling, man, you start out just trying to find yourself, trying to figure out this whole thing of entrepreneurship. You're trying to figure out how you process information, how you track what works and what doesn't work. How do you mentally cope with failure? How do you understand what failure is versus what learning is? How do you pivot from those? So there was a lot of self-growth. There was a lot of self-discovery, especially during that first year. I see a lot of mistakes a lot of people make is when they jump in, they align themselves with other individuals who are also brand new. Gotcha. And it's not necessarily a bad thing unless that's solely who you are surrounding yourself with. So as you guys can see, like, I love music. Love music, big fan of music. And I'm stuck in the 80s. You can probably tell from my hair. Like, give it another 6 months, dude. Like, it's going to be like an John Bon Jovi from 1986, bro, is what I'm going for here. But I've played guitar my entire life. And it's the same thing with quite literally anything. But I'll just use this music, playing guitar as an example, you know. I don't know if everybody do you know who Eddie Van Halen is?
Yeah.
Father Van Halen. Rest in peace. Greatest guitar player in the world. Love him. If you were learning how to play guitar, how much further ahead would you be by surrounding yourself with 5 Eddie Van Halens over the course of 6 months versus other people who are learning how to play guitar at the same time? Like, how much further ahead are you going to get? And what's really cool, there's a book called I just lost it. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's by Simon Sinek. The Infinite Game. That's what it's called.
Game. Okay. That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was talking to Shane Evans just the other day, and he mentioned that book too. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, he was actually the last person on the podcast.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
I love Shane, dude. He's such a great guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, that checks out that he would bring that up. He him and I've had some great conversations, but I really love that book. And in that book, in short, he describes that the way that we grew up, the way that we process information, we kind of confine ourselves. There's think of it kind of like a basketball game. Okay, there's a beginning and there's an end. It's divided up into 4 quarters. Each quarter is 15 minutes long. You can only have 5 players on the court at any given time. If you have more or have you less, there's penalties. You have to play within these boundaries. There's rules, regulations. You can do this, you can't do this. When a basket goes in, so we're 2 points. A basket goes in behind this line, it's 3 points, et cetera, et cetera. There's a clear winner and a loser, right? But it's not just like games, like school. Growing up, school is the exact same way. Right?
School was frustrating for me because I started out as a homeschooler and then I went to the structure of public school. And when I was a homeschooler, I could do my education until a specific time of the day, work on the things that I knew I needed to work on, and then I was free. But in public school, it was like there's only ever one right answer, and that was frustrating.
Yeah. 100%. It makes so much sense why more and more entrepreneurs are leaning towards the homeschooling side of things and taking their kids out of public school because of this limited line of thinking. Not only just the curriculum, but it's very limiting. So anyway, in business, there are no rules. There are no confines. There's no winning and there's no losing. The entire point of business is to just stay in the game. That's the entire point, is how long can you keep the game going? How long can you play the game? Gotcha. There's no winner and there's no loser. There's no 15-minute, as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, you can do anything that you want. You can bring anybody you want in your team. You can literally do anything. And that's the entire point of business. But a lot of the obstacles that I was running into was I had that W-2 mindset. I was trying to build a Fortune 500 company with a W-2 mindset. And then it's aggravating when it's like, well, why isn't this working? One of my favorite quotes, you know who Jim Rohn is?
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes from Jim Rohn. If somebody hands you $1 million, it's best that you learn how to become a millionaire so that you get to keep the money. So you have to become somebody that's capable of handling that $1 million. Not only just making the $1 million, but handling the $1 million. I mean, you look at people that won the lottery as an example. Like, everybody's really quick to say, man, if I won the lottery, I would do this and I would do that. It's like, dude, hold on, wait a second. When we look at statistically how many people end up spending or losing all their money versus somebody else, a successful businessman who could lose the same amount of money, but the difference is he gets it right back and then some, often very quickly. Whereas that other person just loses it and then they're gone. Now let's pretend that knowing what to do with the money is out of the equation. Let's say all this money just lands on a random person's lap. They win the lottery. Like, think about the anxiety, think about the mental struggles that come with that. Think about everybody else now that is reaching out to them, asking for favors, family members
Yeah.
who think that they are entitled to that money. Like, are you even capable of handling that first and foremost? You know what I mean? So there's the self-development side that has to happen. You quite literally have to become an entirely different person.
No, I think you're right on the dot with that, because I think there are people in the world that if you were to give them money, it actually hurts them more than it helps them. Because I've known people that they're doing okay as long as they're broke, but the moment they get some, like their paycheck or their disability coming in, they're face down in a ditch because they've been on a bender for 3 days. They spent all their money, and like it does not do them any good. That's just an extreme example, right? But I think you're exactly right with the lottery thing too. It's interesting that you bring up Jim Rohn, though, because he's actually one of the people that propelled me out of my comfort zone where I was hiding away from socializing with other people. One of the things he says is you should set yourself a goal to make $1 million, not because you want to make $1 million, but because of the person you'll have to become in order to achieve that goal. And I was like, well, now it's not just a monetary goal. It's about character development and becoming a better person. And it goes into that parable that Christ talks about, where the men are supposed to invest their talents for the Lord that leaves them for several years. And the one man doubles it from 5 to 10. And the second man doubles it from 2 to 4. And then the last one hides it away, and he gets scolded for being scared to risk his talent. He doesn't generate anything good. And so he's actually in trouble for that. And it was always interesting because the talent in that culture was actually a full year's wages. It wasn't just a small sum of money. And so it's important to take those risks and to do good in the world. I do think that that's the case, but sometimes we get caught up in our own traumas and our own insecurities. And so sometimes you need that person, like your friend, comes in and kind of twists your arm into learning how to leave your comfort zone. And I do think that that's actually the case, because none of us are in this alone. We're all in relationship to everything else in the world. Whether those relationships are well developed or good is another issue, but we're all in relationships.
Absolutely, man. Well said, man. I think, in my experience, everybody has a gift. God has given everybody a gift. And sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error, of searching and seeking, putting yourself in these different kinds of positions to find what those talents and abilities are. Sometimes you might not, and not everybody's a Tony Hawk. You know what I mean? You're not just going to wake up and be like, oh, dude, like skateboarding, that's my thing. Or being a Travis Pastrana. You're not just going to wake up and, get on a dirt bike and just be doing these triple and quadruple backflips and all this crazy stuff. Sometimes these gifts could be being a friend.
Yeah.
It could be you empathize or sympathize with other people. It could be being a social butterfly. It could be simply just having an ear. It could be actively listening. It could be a gift. And it's up to it's up to each individual to discover what those gifts are. And I always tell people, when you think about your gift, here's how you need to think about it. Your gift is the thing that you do at your best with the least amount of effort. When you find what your gift is, that becomes your zone of genius. That becomes like the one thing that you should start to focus on. And then the answer to all the other problems surrounded, like, what should I do in my business? Like, that needs to be the thing. It's like, okay, if I know, like, as an example, my mom used to call me a social butterfly. Can't imagine why. But I knew if that was something for me, that was the path of least resistance. It's going to get me from A to B to C the quickest. Then the question is, okay, cool. So if I make that the one thing that I focus on, my only other obstacle is I just need to figure out how to monetize that gift.
Yeah.
And so I can go be a closer, right? I can start building these other skills that already complement my ability to talk to people and to communicate and to be friends, right? I can start learning about sales. I can start learning how to negotiate. I can start learning how to persuade. I can start learning how to tell stories. So I can start building all of these skills that already complement what I'm naturally good at. So if I make that the one thing that I focus on, and this is something I wish I would have known, especially during that first year of wholesaling, because I was wearing all the hats. I was doing all the things. I was worried about stuff I had no business in worrying about. But I wish somebody would have broke it down to me like this. But when you make that the one thing that you focus on, then you go into this with the intent of becoming the Michael Jordan of that one thing. Now, think about this. Like if you're the Michael Jordan at closing deals, if you understand the psychology and the sales process and how to properly negotiate and what questions to ask, what questions to not ask, all these other kind of things, for the rest of your life, do you think you would ever have a problem making money?
Nope. You
No.
get all those royalties from the Air Jordans, right?
That's right. Or if you were a bird dog, if you were the Michael Jordan of being a bird dog, if you had this ability to grow this skill, to know how to find good deals, would you ever have a problem making money? No. Or if you're a TC.
It's interesting.
If you're the Michael Jordan of TCing deals, transaction coordinating, handling all the paperwork, your communication, your system, your process, like all these things are like the Michael Jordan. Like you're never going to have a problem making money for the rest of your life. So I always tell people when they're starting out, you got to figure out what your zone of genius is, because there's just not enough time in the day to be good at every single thing. And now I understand why a lot of these people, I've heard Mark Cuban talk about this a lot. He's like, dude, you just have to focus on one thing. You only have to be right one time.
Okay. That's interesting that you've brought this up, because I've been thinking a lot about a few things in business, just from my own personal journey, leaving my W-2. Well, I'm still actually working there, but the intent is to at some point be able to support myself without it. There is a lack of understanding on the difference between price, cost, and value, and how those have an interplay between one another. But I don't think I made any real progress until I stopped beating myself up for my failures. And one of the lessons that I learned from that was that shame doesn't motivate you to action. It's a paralyzing force. And so the first thing you have to do is treat yourself like a person who's worthy of love and affection. And even if you don't believe it, you have to at least act it out. And the interesting thing about that is that once you start doing that, your brain, it follows patterns. And so you jump into a new pattern, and all of a sudden you start to believe it because you've acted it out. And it's hard to articulate that, because it's been a personal journey that has taken me over 20 years to finally get around, to finally start saying it's okay not to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you just move forward and keep trying. And I can't tell you the difference it's made. It's been night and day. Hard to describe.
No, I
But
totally get it, man.
yeah, I think that's something that anyone in the audience who's struggling to find their value should take note of, because it's not going to be an instantaneous thing. You're not going to get instant gratification, but you have to make those changes where you treat yourself good. And then as you start to do that, you're going to start to find your value. The thing that what did you say? The gift is the thing you do at your best with the least amount of effort. You'll find that, but you have to be able to get away from the paralyzation of believing you're not good enough.
What have you found? What's been the best thing for you? Like what I don't know if you call it like a mindset hack necessarily, but what are some of the habits that you have employed into your day-to-day to help with making, because there's an identity shift that has to happen. You quite literally have to become an entirely different person.
I think you're exactly right about that. One of the things that I found is that unless I get some type of social interaction with other people, it's way too easy for me to enter a negative spiral. The second thing that I need is I actually need um, exercise. I have to have at least 20 minutes of movement every day. Otherwise, my body, I don't know, I get into this funk. And
Yeah.
so what I've done is even if nothing else happens in the day, I reach out to somebody to talk a little bit, and I make sure I run at least 20 minutes, whether it's on the treadmill or outside. And those two things, they keep the down days. They're not gone, right? Because everyone, as part of being human, of having up and down days.
Yes.
But I can make it through the tough ones a lot easier. I don't know. Maybe the solution for other people will be different because each person's unique. But I've found that those are the things that help me get through and stay positive.
I love that, bro. I love that. There's so many parallels between what you said, things that I'm doing, things I'm seeing other people do, and things, like Bill Gates and all these successful people that they talk about including those types of things into their day-to-day as well. Nobody talks enough about I don't know if negative is the right word. For lack of better term, I'll just use the word negative, but the negative or the downside, the struggle, that's a better word for it, of being an entrepreneur, dude. It is lonely. It is lonely as hell, dude. There's nobody coming to save you. And especially, I don't know, for me living in Alaska, it's like trying to run a business from Mars, So there's like literally nobody here, man. It's like 2 people that live here, and the other guy isn't into entrepreneurship, so I'm kind of left on my own here. But
yeah, I get that.
We can all connect virtually, but it's lonely, man. And so being able to talk about those things openly is something really neat. You don't see enough of it, in my opinion.
Well, and I think there's this unspoken, I don't want to say taboo because that feels like too strong of a word, but like almost like an elephant in the room amongst entrepreneurs, that if you talk about the struggle, you're not trying hard enough, or you're just I don't know. Do you get that?
I can see that. Yeah, absolutely.
Where like, oh, you're just not working hard enough. Work harder. Suck it up, buttercup, kind of thing. But commiserating about the struggle doesn't mean you're not willing to put the work in. You still have to recognize that it's there.
Yeah. Well, I like to think of it more of like a not necessarily commiserating, but it's like, hey, we acknowledge this thing exists and we're all experiencing it. So how can we come together? How can we talk about it or support each other in a way that we've never had before?
Yeah.
And just with things like technology and Zooms and things like that, it makes it a little easier.
I think so. And I think you're right. Maybe commiserating is the wrong word because we're not looking to use it as an excuse. But maybe we could use it as the weight we use to make our reps to strengthen ourselves.
Dude, that's good, bro. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see more people talk about that kind of stuff because once you get off a Zoom with somebody, and then throughout the day you're like, I don't know, scrolling through social media or something, you see everybody on social media is winning, right? Nobody's ever losing. Everybody's winning on social media. And so we started this game of like comparing ourselves to other people. And, it kind of goes back into what Simon Sinek talks about and how we were raised to think about ourselves. In public school, that's how we were taught to measure our own success, was quite literally of what Jan is doing sitting next to me.
The bell curve, right?
Yeah. Well, then everybody else is compared to, that's why you have state and national averages on test scores. Mm-hmm. And then you're compared against those test scores, quite literally compared to somebody else. So it's no wonder that you get people that jump from a W-2 to being an entrepreneur and then are going through all of these struggles, these mental hurdles, because that's how we were taught to measure success, was based on what John on Facebook is doing.
Yeah. Curious, isn't it?
It is, dude. It is 100%. So it's nice to be able to come in and have these types of conversations as entrepreneurs and allowing us all to understand that that's not how we measure success.
Yeah. It's interesting we've gotten onto this topic because I struggled for, I'd say, 3 or 4 weeks after I had my first PML deal because I wasn't getting anything done in my business. I work night shift at my W-2, and for a good 3 or 4 weeks, I'd come home so exhausted that I couldn't even keep my eyes open. And so I'd crash for the rest of the day. I wouldn't get anything done in my business. And then I wake up and I'm like, you're not doing anything. Your business isn't moving. And so, you get down on yourself.
Yeah, frustrating.
And I had to look back at all the progress that I'd made since I'd started this journey, because it's only been about 10 months since I started. And I got to see, like, I started talking to people again. I started this podcast. I learned about bookkeeping. I learned about finances, things about real estate and lending, and how wholesaling works, and how email marketing works, and how I started my own LLC. I set up a bank account. I booked my first flight to go out of the state that I've never done myself before. I booked my first hotel, like all kinds of things in progress that I made over the last 10 months. And I was like, wow, okay, I've only made $1,700 since I started, but look at all this character development. And this is what I started to do it for in the first place. It wasn't chiefly about the money, even though that is part of what it's about. It was about trying to become a better person and being a man that my son could look up to with respect. And it's like, makes you really emotional when you start to see that things are improving in that fashion and that degree. And you're like, wow, why didn't I start this sooner? And it's like, well, I didn't see because I wasn't looking in the right place. So,
It's funny, dude. Thank you for sharing that, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. Matter of fact, you've done more and made more money in 10 months than I did in my first year in real estate. You're doing something right, bro. You're doing something right. There's an amazing book. I don't know if you've read it, but I recommend everybody read it. It really nails down like how to measure success. It's called The Gap and the Gain.
I haven't read it, but who wrote it? Who's the author?
The same. Oh man,
I can look it up.
Benjamin Hardy. Benjamin Hardy.
Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah,
Okay.
Benjamin Hardy.
No, I'm an avid reader. I did not grow up with television. I only had it for about 3 months when I was a kid because I was super sick with one of the 3 variations of hepatitis. I don't remember. One of them's like one you can get from a common cold kind of thing, and that's the one I got. But my parents got television just so that I'd have something to do. Little 7-year-old isn't able to eat ice cream, eat pizza, or ride his bike or do anything but sit on the couch for 3 months. I was going stir crazy, cabin fever kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But because of that, I gained a huge appreciation for literature and just reading in general. So, but yeah, that's very cool. Now I know we haven't covered this yet, but I was kind of hoping that the people who are going to be watching this episode can hear your story about how you decided to drop wholesaling and what happened when you found your partner, Chris James, and how you guys worked that out to make yourselves really successful in that regard.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. So Chris James and I, we'll just kind of go in chronological order here. So Chris James and I keep telling everybody, everyone asks me that, like, how did you guys meet? And I need to I've been trying to come up with a good story for the last 18 months. I need to get a good story that like embarrasses him. I usually started out with like, oh yeah, just this classical, guy falls in love with guy, we met at Chili's, type of deal. Got to come up with something to embarrass him. But no, it was really anticlimactic. We both just met. We met a mastermind we went down to in Phoenix, a little over 2 years ago now. It was in like March of 2022, and we met there, and some of the advice that we were given from our mentor was, you guys need to build a board of advisors. And basically what a board of advisors is the way he described it was like an accountability group on steroids.
Okay.
So it was, Pace. So
yeah,
Pace
I
gets
actually
a phone
heard
call
him say something along those lines at Squad Up.
Oh, did he?
I think he mentioned something of the board of advisors. I wrote
Okay.
it down in my little journal thing, and I haven't been able to fill it out very far. I got to get on that.
Dude, you do. He told us a story, and I'll share it with you real quick.
Yeah.
He gets a phone call from Brent Daniels one day, and he's like, hello. And Brent's like, Pace, I need you to get over my office like stat, like now. And he's like, oh shit. Okay. And he hightails it on over there, and he walks in there. There's like 10, 12 people in there. And of course, Jamil is there, and Jerry Norton and the whole gang is there. And Brent says, all right, I want to see what's in all of your guys' bank accounts. I want to see how much money is in your account right now. I want to see how much money your business is making. Pretty loaded question to ask somebody, right? As a matter of fact, the way Pace described it, it was almost like, it's like pulling your pants down. It's like, all right, guys, what are we dealing with here? What are we working with here? A pretty intimate question to ask somebody. A couple of people actually walked out, but for everybody else who stayed, he said, I want all of you guys to be making 25% more in your business by this time next year, or you are out of my circle. You're out of the group text. That doesn't mean we're not friends, doesn't mean we're not going to go to dinner and our kids aren't going to play together. But you're no longer in the circle of trust, so to speak. So it's like, it really takes accountability to a whole nother level. It's like you're either doing this. We've all got stuff going on. Life happens. I'm not downplaying anybody's tragic life events or anything that happens. That's part of life. But there's also some sort of consistency, discipline, resiliency that comes with, despite these things that happen in our life, continuing to push forward and continuing to grow and hold yourself accountable as well as the other people in your board.
Well, and the way I've been looking at it is, if I can learn how to do things when life is hectic, well, then when life isn't hectic, things are just kind of like you're coasting at that point because you've already got everything figured out.
Yeah. You do the hard work now. So what's the saying? It's like you live a hard life now so you can live an easy life later, versus the people who live an easy life now will live a hard life later.
Or the fact that you're never going to be as young again as you are now. So like the clock's ticking.
Yes. I love that one, bro. So anyway, Pace shared that story with us. And so Chris and I had the opportunity to meet prior to the day before this event. And so walked up to Chris and was like, hey man, would love to have you on my board of advisors. And he's like, dude, okay, cool. I was thinking the exact same thing. So we got about 3 other individuals and we put this board of advisors together. There's about 4 or 5 of us total. And so we were on each other's board of advisors for about 3 months, and just being able to have those interactions and see what our communication is like, what our vision's like, what our goals are like, what our accountability is like, all that kind of stuff. We're like, hey man, you know what? Maybe we should date a little bit. So we became business partners June 1st of 2022. And dude, we just focused on the one thing. The only thing we did was like focus on our zone of genius. So basically, in short, like I was saying, like for me, that was like, I spent the last 18 months prior to that focusing on that one thing, just building that skill of becoming a closer, understanding sales, negotiation, and storytelling and persuasion, and all that kind of stuff. And so when we became business partners, that was like the one thing that he and I focused on, was just closing deals for all these other people. And we made like 72 grand in the first 60 days of our partnership. And that was the only thing we focused on. We had other people handle paperwork. We had other people handle dispo. I didn't have to learn or know any of those things. I've already been down that road. And so I knew that I didn't want to go down that road again. So this was just a way better way of doing things. And so we spent the next 18 months as our partner in our partnership wholesaling. So last year, I was out camping with my family. And for everybody who doesn't know, the summers in Alaska are so stinking short, like 3 months long. If you have a good year, 4 months. And so, and then everybody hibernates the next 9 months.
What do they call it? The land of the midnight sun, but the other half of the year is like the land of
the opposite,
but the moon, right?
Absolutely, bro. Terrible place to be. The summers are so good here. That's what keeps people here year round. We put up with 9 months, so we get 3 good months. But I was out camping with my family, and all summer long, that's all we do is we go camping and fishing. We get it in while we can. And the entire time, dude, like I'm out with my family, but I had this realization. I kind of took myself out of the play and kind of looked at what the last couple summers for me has looked like. And it was my wife and kids, bro, that were going out camping and going out hiking or going fishing or going out to some of the local eateries. And I'm stuck in the camper. I had turned my camper into a mobile office.
Gotcha. So they were going out with the cardboard cutout of Jesse.
Yeah, exactly. Bro. They're taking a picture of me and just putting it in their pocket and taking me along. And I had this epiphany last year, and I said to Chris, I'm like, Chris, why did we get into real estate? Why did you get into real estate? He said, to buy properties. I was like, me too. Then why are we wholesaling? And that's just what happens. Most people get into real estate and they start out wholesale. Most people get into real estate because they want to go own properties. And then they get underneath this umbrella of real estate, and everybody tells them, well, hey, you don't have access to money. You don't have the relationships. You don't know how to do this. So what you need to do is you need to start out wholesaling. And so I was like, why do we have to do that? We don't need that. All you need is two things you need to go buy a deal. That's it. And it's not a CRM. It's not a dialer. It's not skip tracing lists. It's not door knocking. It's not doing any of these things. The only thing, if you want to go buy a property today, whether it's creatively or conventionally, you need a property, you need a deal, and then you need money. That's it.
Well, two things,
so we dissolved our wholesaling business last year and just went all in on just buying properties. So that's where we are right now. We're just continuing on.
And you buy nationwide, don't you?
We do, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Very cool.
So that's where we are right now, man. So we built out our team last year. We just gosh dang it, within the first, I don't know, 3 months of us making that switch, we bought like 64 doors. And then the rest of the year we're looking to grow, just continuing on the rest of our portfolio. So similarly, like when I focus on one skill, I also do the same thing in my business. Like we focus on one thing and we build it up, and then we go focus on another thing. So you have, I think a lot of people make the mistake of they seeing all these other, I don't know if gurus is the right word, but all these other people that are successful, and they're doing the wholesaling, they're doing the fix and flips, they're doing the buy and holds, they're buying the apartment complexes, like they're doing all these things. And so people think that, oh, well, I can just do that. There's nothing to say that you can't do that. Your business can absolutely look exactly like that. But I think the mistake that most people make is thinking that they do it all at one time. And they're like, you know what I mean? Like somebody sends them a multifamily and they're out here wholesaling and they're like, oh, well, let me go see if I can buy this. Now, all their time, energy, and effort is spent trying to do something that they don't even understand. That's not even part of what it is that they were doing. So you focus on one thing. So right now we're buying multifamily that are under 20 doors and under, and then single family. And we're doing a lot of pad split as well. And so that's kind of been our primary focus. So our goal is to get up to have 150 doors by the end of the year. So we're just focusing on building that up. And then once that's built up, we're just going to maintain that. So a big part of what we've focused on this year, in addition to building that portfolio, is getting our systems and hiring the right people in place. Because in addition to that being where we want to be by the end of the year, we also are going to have the people underneath us be able to take charge of the entire operation. So just as an example right now, so if we're doing like a pad split or a fix and flip or something like that, the contractor will reach out to our operations manager. He'll relay that information. Then our operations manager will relay that information back to us. And then Chris or I will talk it out and make a decision. And then that's how the line of communication happens.
Gotcha.
So what my goal is to have our entire real estate operation on autopilot by the end of the year. So not only are we continuing to build it, but I'm really focused on right now getting the individuals underneath us the ability to have the authority to be able to make those decisions and understand why and share in the vision of the company and how we're going to grow it. So by the end of the year, as we continue buying into next year, they're now making the decisions, and Chris and I are not making any decisions.
Okay. I like the vision. It's interesting. Definitely more than I've ever considered. I'm sure we'll get there at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've set it up that way. I like it though, because I'm trying to think of the quote that's coming to my mind, but I don't have it concrete, right? So I'll probably just have to paraphrase something along the lines that bosses delegate tasks while leaders delegate responsibility, I think is what
I
it
love
boils
that.
down to.
Makes sense.
I like the way you're setting things up, because that means you're kind of building other people up to where they can be what's the word, autonomous.
Yeah.
So I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. In order to do that, as a leader, you've got to allow the people underneath you to fail.
Yeah.
And then you've got to be there to support them and to give feedback and to do all these things. As a leader, one of the big things that I hammer on within my company, it is part of our company culture, is I think a mistake I see a lot of people make once they start bringing people into the business. One, they're hiring to scale, which you should never do. When you start bringing people into your business, you should hire to buy back your time.
Okay. No, that's interesting. You say that. Wow. It's like everything comes together sometimes when you're trying to make things work, because I was actually reading, the last book that I finished was called Buy Back Your Time. And he talks about that, by Dan Martell.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back into what you're talking about with your zone of genius as well, because he talks about the 4 quadrants of delegate and regulate, invest in, and productivity quadrants, right? And so, yeah, very cool that you're getting at that. So what's the difference between buying back or hiring to buy back your time and hiring to scale? Like how does a person recognize what that difference is so that they can focus on one or the other, right?
Good question. Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a great example. I talked to somebody probably about a month or so ago who is in the same community we're in, and he's like, Jesse, I'm trying to figure out how to scale our business, but I don't know what's going right. I don't know what's going wrong. I said, well, tell me a little bit about it. He's like, well, we've got somewhere between 70 and 80 people that are making calls for us, and the deals are not where we want them to be. And I'm like, bro, like that's a problem right there. Like that's a good example of people who are bringing people in because they were trying to scale their business, versus what I'm doing is it's me and Chris, and then we've only got two other people underneath us. That's it. There's 4 people on our team.
Okay. Is that Carlin and Haley?
Nope. Different business. Those 2 are part of the
business.
growth.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So Angel Miller and James Hostert.
Okay.
So we've got Angel is our head of operations, James is our operations manager, and one of the ways that Chris and I have run our company and have grown our company is because the mistake most people make as CEOs, you're up here, right? Everybody's hire is like a VA or like an acquisitions manager or something like that. In this guy's case, he hired like 80 acquisition managers, right? So Nathaniel, who's responsible for training all of those 80 people?
Imagine the person that hired them.
Exactly, right? So you got the CEOs that are spending all of their time, energy, and effort answering questions from all those 80 people.
Wow.
Getting on phone calls, listening to recordings. Like, how do you have time to grow a business at that point? You don't. Your time is literally gone. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's because people are hiring to scale. What
Gotcha.
I'm doing is, as a CEO, Chris and I are the CEOs, instead of hiring down here, our first hire was an operations manager.
So that will be the person that training
They're
the
overseeing all the operations,
other
literally
people.
everything.
Okay, interesting.
Right? They're setting up the servicing, they're setting up the property management, they're getting in touch with realtors to get CMAs, they're reaching out to get contracting quotes and bids and things like that. So typically, if I hired somebody down here, that's stuff that I would have to be responsible for, right? In addition to training these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But because I hired from the top down instead of the bottom up, I become more hands off to focus on my zone of genius to grow the business using my talents and gifts that are unique to me, and setting that pace, setting that vision, setting the goals for what our business is going to accomplish. And
I
so,
really
as you
like
can see
that.
now from how we've been operating the last year and where we're going to be by the end of the year, our like you said, our real estate business is going to be completely autonomous. Chris
Mm-hmm.
and I are going to be completely 99.99% hands off. And then part of our goals for next year, now Chris and I get to go focus on getting into much bigger commercial multifamily and buying one or two more businesses.
Okay, very cool. So I'd like to make a note that while that makes it sound like it's easy to do, I imagine you guys probably put a lot of work and effort into doing that in your zone of genius. You didn't just kind of slide into, hey, everyone else do this for me and we'll reap the benefits, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And you got to find, you got to set that, you got to set that company culture. It's not like Chris and I are hands off. What I love about our culture is that we're a family, and all four of us. And shoot, dude, even towards the end of the year, dude, like whenever everybody's starting to set new goals and things like that, right? Like as a company, we will fill out our goals worksheet together.
I like
When
it.
we
That's
go bring
awesome.
somebody else into our business, we will all interview them. Like it's not me and Chris having these separate meetings necessarily, and then we just feed them with information they need to know. Like we move as a collective unit, and everybody has a say in things, and we encourage everybody to play devil's advocate and to challenge ideas and to things like that. It just makes such a for a healthy and wonderful and cohesive unit. And it's in my opinion, I think our company culture is unparalleled. I think we did an amazing job, and I'm really grateful for the individuals that have allowed Chris and I to grow as well. It's not just us allowing them; like they've allowed us to make mistakes as leaders and CEOs. And so I'm very grateful for them for that opportunity as well.
I like how you describe that because it mirrors what I've experienced with my marriage to my wife. We have always been very open with one another, and I feel like that has been the key to the fact that we've been married for 11 years and we still are infatuated with one another. Because when things go wrong, because in life,
Mhm.
there's always something.
Yeah.
We're able to be honest with one another and work through it together and tackle the problem as a team instead of trying to one up the other person. And I
Mhm.
really think that that's been the key for that. So it's cool that you get to have that exact same kind of experience with your business. And what I think is even cooler, at least based on what I've heard you say, is that it didn't happen by accident. It happened because you're
Right.
intentional about it, which
Absolutely.
which is amazing.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. But this is where all the self-development and all that kind of stuff works,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
During that first year that I spent wholesaling, I didn't see that. I didn't see reading books as a money maker. I saw it as a waste of time. I was like, dude, I just need to be on the phones. That's what's going to make me money. You know what I mean? And I didn't understand that learning and building these skills is real. Like most people overestimate what they can do in the short term. They feel like after a week or two or a month or 2 or 3 months, they should be
You'll
a
be a
millionaire,
millionaire in a year,
gazillionaire by
right?
now. And because they're not, it's like, well, F this, it doesn't work. But they drastically underestimate what they could do in a year.
The short term, the long term. Interesting.
Absolutely.
No, I like that. It's back to that gap in the gain kind of a thing, right?
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, well, I've really enjoyed our talk today. I know you got to get going here soon, but before we end, I was just wondering if you have any kind of advice for people who are just getting started out what would be your number one recommendation? I know we've talked about a couple different things, but get in that zone, right?
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing, man. If I could go back and give myself some advice, it would be um to focus on what's that zone of genius. And I've heard what's his name? Dean Graziosi. I heard him talk about this one time where he had like a bullseye on a board, and the center of that bullseye represented that's your zone of genius. Okay. And then you got all these other tasks outside that are the different rings of the bullseye that on the outside you might have a $5 an hour task. And then on the next one in, you might be a $20 an hour task. And then the next one in might be $50, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you value your time as an example, $1 million a year would be a $500 an hour rate. How most people look at their time, like if they have to go mow their yard, and it takes them 2 hours to mow their yard, they can have somebody else come in and do it for $40. Or what they'll end up saying is, hey, you know what? I can save myself $40 and I'll just mow my yard myself. But if your time is worth $500 an hour, because that's where your zone of genius is. So when you get to the center of that bullseye, that 500, it could be $500 an hour, it could be $10,000 an hour, it could be more than that, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
If your time is worth $500 an hour in that scenario, you're not saving yourself $40 as most people think by mowing your yard yourself. What you're losing is $960.
Gotcha. You saying that actually, it might even be more insidious than that for some people, because this is something that I've noticed as I've learned about like I mentioned, the difference between price, cost, and value.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use a video game, for example. An average video game costs like 50 or 60 bucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that person goes and they buys that video game for 50 or 60 bucks, but then they spend 500 hours playing the game. Well, yeah, that's fun, but how many hours could you have been earning your hourly rate, that instead of earning that rate, you were just using it to entertain yourself? So maybe that game only cost 50 bucks, at least as far as the price tag is concerned. But after 500 hours of time where you could have been earning that money, you actually spent like 15 grand on the game, because that's how much money you could have earned if you had done something that was productive instead.
Love that.
So, it was a sobering realization for me when I started to understand how that worked.
Right?
So,
Isn't that crazy? And that's why I always tell people, like, you got to hire to buy back your time. If you value your time like that, that's what opens it up. Like, that's what's going to allow Chris and I next year, because we spent a good portion of this year consciously and intentionally making that part of our goals, was to be able to get our company to a place to where we can be hands off. So next year we can buy businesses, and that because we get to just focus on our zone of genius in that next endeavor. So yeah,
cool.
I love what you said there, Nathaniel. Thank you for sharing that, bro.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed our talk today. I'd like to thank you again for coming on the show today. If there's anything else you'd like to leave with the audience before we leave, go ahead. Now's your time.
No, well, thank you so much. Just I don't have anything else, man. I just want to let you know how much I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your friendship, and I'm very humbled and grateful and blessed of the opportunity to be here today and to share some things with you. So thank you for that gift, and thank you for that opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Certainly, definitely, my pleasure. Well, for those of you who are listening, if you'd like to connect with Jesse, he's on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and you can also find his coaching group, the Growth Co., as a Facebook group. So I will go ahead and include those links in the YouTube description with the video. And if you have any questions for either of us in the future, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about wealth generation, finances, and real estate investing. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Well,